Born in Mount Pleasant, Texas, Daron Roberts attended the University of Texas at Austin, where he became the student body president. Beyond graduating from UT, Daron graduated from Harvard Law School, has coached multiple NFL teams, including the Detroit Lions and Kansas City Chiefs, and has written a book called Call an Audible. Daron delivers over 100 speeches each year, sharing his inspiring story of true grit and waging war against the status quo. He is currently the founding director of the Leadership Center at UT Austin, and we are so lucky to listen to speak to him today. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Chloe. I've got to take you on the road with me. I appreciate that. I treasure these moments. I really do. Listen, I crave the opportunity to fly in, airdrop bad advice on unsuspecting soon-to-be graduates, and then return back to Austin, Texas. But first, I want you Scots to stand up. I want you to stand up. You don't want to, I don't care. I want you to turn to these grandparents and mamas and uncles and aunts. I want you to wave and thank them, give them a hand, clap for them. They've put up with you for 18 years, my God, that's the least you can do. Some of you are just gonna go back home and live in your basement. Have a seat. Listen, I'm fortunate to have a triumvirate of support here today. My mom, my dad, and my sister. My dad refused to let me quit my 6th grade football team. My departure lasted one day before he put me back into his Chevy Silverado and drove me back to the field house. And he knew something then. He knew that quitting can become a habit. And my mom forced my school district to accept me into the gifted and talented program, even though I came up 1 point short. She understood that a day's worth of drawing pictures could not sum up a kid. And I was fortunate to go on and graduate 3rd in my class. I thank her for her bold courage. And then my sister. My Lord, I fought with this woman for most of my childhood. She's the first writer I met. And when I was young, I could not understand her fascination with words. But now at the tender age of 43, I find myself trying to emulate her. Now look, let's be honest. Speakers tend to sprinkle these pieces of advice like fail forward and you can do it and seize the day, make your bed. I don't care if you make your bed or not. I have 5 kids. That's the least of my concerns, okay? I do come bearing 4 observations. These are 4 observations that I've gleaned from a life of rejection and disappointment, pain and triumph. And look, I am under no illusion. You will not remember all 4 of these observations 22 years from now. But my prayer is that something sticks in your subconscious. Something lays dormant down in that storehouse of memory in your brain, and at some point in your life, you find it to be of value. Number 1, we're all going to die. Okay, not right now. Okay, don't call 911. But every time I say this to a crowd, people gasp. It's the truth. It's the truth. Remember back in the 2nd grade, there was that image of the life cycle. Right? And it started with this seed, and the arrows relentlessly revolved in a clockwise motion. And then it finished with this sunlit picture of a plant. All of us are passengers on a one-way trip through this thing we call life. From the cradle to the casket, you get one shot. And death is an unruly visitor. It tends not to RSVP. It comes at surprising moments. It has no respect for socioeconomic status. It doesn't care where your mother went to business school. It doesn't care about your address. And I'd start with this because I want you to have a sense of urgency. A sense of urgency. Hammond, Louisiana, Buffalo, New York. There are problems plaguing this country that need the full force of your wisdom and your courage and your creativity. People always will say, listen, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. And you'll learn this as you grow up. Listen, adults love to be busy. We love to be busy. We are fascinated with busyness with a Y. And oftentimes we confuse busyness with business. Time is not found, it is made. But it's going to require your intentionality at every step of this next journey. Number 2, wait is not a synonym for no, and no is not a synonym for never. I'm a 5th generation East Texan, born and raised in Mount Pleasant, Texas. If you were to walk into my 6th grade English class, pull me out into the hallway and ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would say governor of Texas by age 40. I had it all planned out. Now, I turned 44 in 5 months, so obviously I took a wrong turn somewhere. But that was the plan. I was on a very linear, if A, then B, if B, then C type of roadmap. So I go to the University of Texas, it's 1997, and on my plan, the next plot was to become student body president. At the time, Texas had the largest student body in the country, 50,523 students. I run in a crowded field and I win. I check off the box. Next, Harvard Law School. I apply to Harvard Law School. I don't get accepted. I don't get rejected. What is the purgatory in the middle? The dreaded wait list. I'll paraphrase the letter for you. Dear Daron, we like you. Unfortunately, there are so many more applicants than we like than you. Now, Daron, in the very highly unlikely event that all of those humans turn us down, we may reach back out to you. But Daron, if you have any viable options for law school, we highly advise you to take advantage of them. With love, Joyce P. Curl, Dean of Admissions. This was not on the map. I was distraught. I walked around campus in sackcloth and ashes for 3 days. A mentor, God rest his soul, Lowell Leberman, calls me up on a Thursday. He says, you are going to work for Joe Lieberman. I said, well, thanks, Lowell, I appreciate that. He goes, you start on Monday. I said, Lowell, it's Thursday. He goes, I know what day it is. I said, it's going to be flights are going to be too expensive. He said, well, get a bus. So I jump on a Greyhound bus from Austin to D.C. So I find myself in the year 2001 working on education bills in the U.S. Senate. The first real cul-de-sac of my life. I don't want to be there. I want to be in law school. But then September 11th comes, and I have a front row seat to one of the most tumultuous times in our nation's history, in a place where I didn't want to be. I'm still applying for law school. I get waitlisted 4 years in a row, finally get in. I get to law school, and I do what law students do. Listen, hearing all of the Latin took me back to my first year of law school, con law and contracts, and I'm going in and going through the motions until I worked this football camp at the University of South Carolina. I was an average, I would say above average football player in Mount Pleasant High School. All right, I was a 5'10 and a half, 162-pound strong safety. That was with the bananas and the peanut butter sandwiches and the protein shakes. But that was the end of my playing career. I'm sitting in the back of a room at the University of South Carolina, and Steve Spurrier, the head football coach, walks out and he says, I need someone to fill in for a coach who didn't show up. Now, I'm there with my buddy from high school. He was an actual coach, Pflugerville Conley. So I raise my hand, and he's elbowing me. He's like, please don't get us kicked out of this camp, Daron. I'm like, it's okay. Coach Spurrier says, what's your name, son? I said, Coach Roberts. Coach Roberts, where do you coach? The plot thickens. First thing came to my mind, Mount Pleasant High School. Mount Pleasant High School, that's wonderful. You have group 6. Yes, sir. Listen, I had no clue what this man was talking about. Later, I would find out that group 6 consisted of 60 sixth graders, none of whom had any athletic talent whatsoever. Unfortunately for them, they had a coach who couldn't coach. I went to academy the night before. I bought a bucket hat, some sunglasses, a whistle. I had a stopwatch. The night before, I'm watching Tony Dungy, Deion Sanders, taking scrupulousous notes. Listen, one of the last things I want to do on this earth is I'm going to go and track down those 60 young people. I'm sure before they got to that camp, they were headed on a trajectory of success. Then they got Coach Roberts in group 6. Although I didn't know how to coach, I did notice something. It was the first time in my life that I did not have to set my alarm clock to get up. I was up at 5 a.m., I'm excited. I'm hitting the field. Even though I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I'm excited for the next day. I had the job of bed check. And so I'm walking down the hallway and I start to eavesdrop on room 1102. Behind the door, 2 kids in my group, different races. Parents don't shop at the same types of grocery stores. They don't pray to the same God. But as I'm listening to their conversation, they're not talking about what divides them. They're making predictions about how many touchdowns they're going to score in the next season and what college they want to go to. And that's when it hit me that in the world of sport, for these very brief moments, race, socioeconomic status, evaporate, and you just have humans trying to execute a play. So I decided I want to be a football coach. So I called my mom and dad, and I said, Mom, I want to be a football coach. Mom said, let me put your dad on the phone. What the heck's going on here? Dad, I want to be a football coach. He said, well, that's great. We support you. He said, let's pray. So we prayed. I wrote a letter to every team in the NFL. How many are there? 32. I'm sure you only care about one. But yes, there are 31 other teams. I get all the rejections. The Bears, the Chargers. Yes, the Cowboys. No. I get one yes from a man named Herm Edwards with the Kansas City Chiefs. He calls me, June the 1st, 2007. He said, son, what's wrong with you? I said, well, coach, nothing that's been documented. He said, hey, listen, Daron. I don't even read my own mail, okay? But Catherine, my assistant, put your letter on my desk, and the sticky on top of it says, not sure what's wrong with this guy, you should call him. Catherine still gets a bouquet of flowers from me every year on her birthday. I said, well, I'm so glad she did. I said, look, coach, I worked this football game. He said, yeah, I read the letter. He goes, take out a pen and paper. So I took out my Pilot V5 Precise pen. I'm ready to go. He said, I'm going to make an offer to you. Training camp intern. Okay, training camp intern. No pay. No pay. No benefits. No benefits. So this is where I'm wondering, do I really need this pen? Like, I'm not the smartest guy on the planet. I'm not sure he said anything that I need to record on paper. He says, hey, Daron, listen, you're going to work 18-hour days, son. I said, sign me up. He said, all right. After you graduate, I want to make sure that you go from Cambridge, Massachusetts, get here as fast as you can to Kansas City, Missouri. The next week, I walked into my dean's office. At the time, my dean was Elena Kagan. And I said, Dean Kagan, So here's the thing. I just turned down all of my law firm offers, and I just took a training camp internship position with the Kansas City Chiefs. And she looked at me and she said, Daron, could you translate that for me? What does that mean? I said, Kansas City Chiefs, it's a football team. She said, yeah, I get it. I said, well, they only have a few of these spots, and so I took it. She said, good for you. I said, now I'm kind of scared. She says, listen, when I hand that diploma to you on June the 6th, the one thing you won't find on it will be an expiration date. She says, Daron, if you coach for 2 days or 2 decades, I am fairly certain that people will still be having legal issues. And if you ever want to practice law, I promise you there will be work. So off I go to Kansas City. Now listen, if you want whatever that thing is badly enough, you're going to chase it, and it's not going to make sense. And I talk about what you want because I want to make sure that we differentiate what you want from what other people want. Not what grandmama thinks you're going to grow up to become, and not what the pastor told you should be, but the thing that you want, right? That fire inside of you that's shut up inside of your bones. And maybe you don't know what it is that you want, but at some point this thing is going to hit you. And when it does, the wait list and the no's will come crashing in. And it's at that moment when you hear those sounds of rejection, you should look for the words inside of your brain on your subconscious, not yet. Wait list, not yet. No, not yet. Number 3, beware the purpose trap. Oh, friends, let me tell you. I've taught for 8 years at the University of Texas. I've had 2,842 students, and I keep copious notes. I require every student in my class to have a one-on-one with me. You know, in college, they have this thing called office hours. And the research shows that, you know, in a good semester, around 10% of your students will show up for office hours. So I decided to make it mandatory. If you want to get your participation grade, a part of your grade for participation, you have to come and talk with me. The number one question I get from 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds at the University of Texas, how do I find my purpose? How do I find my purpose? They're distraught. I don't know my purpose yet. And this is when I lean over the table and I said, neither do I. Neither do most of the people in this arena. We've done a disservice to you. We've painted this thing we call purpose as this monolithic thing, right? This one thing. Even though you are a complex being and the world is crawling with 7.2 billion humans, you were set here to do this one thing. I'm not so cynical. I'm not so cynical. I want you to think of your life as a life of seasons. You have skills and talents and passions. And at different parts of your life, struggles and challenges will beckon for you to bring those skills and those passions and those talents to the forefront. So your purpose may last for 2 days, it may last for 2 decades. Just have the courage to answer the call. I'm reminded of this question, who do you want to be when you grow up? I know you've heard this, right? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And people usually say, what do you want to be? What? What is a terminal word? What? It beckons for something impressive, right? I want to be governor of Texas by 40. Spend more time thinking about who you want to be. Think about who you want to be. 4 years ago, I delivered the eulogy at my senior AP English teacher's funeral. I don't know where she went to college. I don't know if she was ever awarded Teacher of the Year by the Mount Pleasant Independent School District. What I do remember is that Judy Henson sat down with me through 7 revisions of a paper. I mean, listen, the first paper that I get back from her, it looks like she has just opened a vein. This woman spared no red ink. Revision 3, revision 4. Listen, at this point, I'm just like, I don't care what grade you give me, just make it stop. Just make it stop. Revision 6, she said, Daron, you know what? I was thinking about you this weekend. I said, oh, Lord Jesus. You are in love with adverbs. Now, an 18-year-old young man hears this, and I'm like, what in the hell is this woman talking about? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, Daron, when you divorce adverbs, your writing's going to take off. In my mind, I'm thinking, can it just take off right now and just give me a grade? She whispered something into my ear one day on the way. I'm headed to football practice, and she says, hey, Daron, you're going to be a writer. I look at this woman like, doesn't she know I'm going to be, I've told her this repeatedly, I'm going to be governor of Texas by age 40. You're going to be a writer. And she was right. This recent transition of my life, I spend every waking moment of my days trying to assemble these words from an infinite array, what seems like an infinite possibility of words, trying to assemble words into the right sentence. So as I walked through that eulogy, I thought to myself, it's not that Judy Henson was a teacher. The what's not important. It's the who. It's the who. This woman was patient. This woman was kind. She was thoughtful. Last point. The good stuff is in the deep end. The good stuff is in the deep end. Listen, for 6 months, I lived in Arrowhead Stadium. The reason was, one, I was broke. So this was during my training camp internship. And look, if you were to Google Daron Roberts, Kansas City Chiefs in 2007, absolutely nothing would come up. This was like a black ops mission, okay? I didn't sign a single piece of paperwork. I slept in a deserted meeting room, sub-level of Arrowhead Stadium. The reason is because Herm Edwards would walk through the front doors at 5 a.m. every single morning. Preseason, postseason, off-season, training camp, draft, you name it. Herm Edwards on the dot, 5 a.m. And something in the back of my brain said, the only chance I have to stick around here is for me to be the first thing he sees when he walks through those doors. So at the end of the season, we went 4-12, which you didn't have to, make an A in your AP Calculus exam to know that that's not a good record, okay? 4-12 is not a good record. And here's what happens in the NFL. When you go 4-12, people get fired. There's this thing called Black Monday. This is not to be confused with Black Friday, okay? This is when you get great deals on electronics. No. Black Monday is the Monday after the final regular season game. And if you're going to get fired as a coach, there's a good chance it's going to happen on that Monday. I watched 4 coaches walk into Herm Edwards' office, and they walk out with 2 things: a security guard and a dolly. They have 45 minutes to clear their belongings and exit Arrowhead Stadium. Catherine walks over to my office, which was a converted closet. We torn the door off the hinges, put up some shelves. She said, Daron, Coach Edwards would like to see you. I was like, oh. So I'm walking into his office, and I think to myself, technically, I can't get fired. Haven't signed a single piece of paperwork. There are no pay stubs to speak of. And I sit down, and Herm says, Darren, sit down, have a seat, son. Hey, listen, first thing I want to say is, son, I really appreciate all of your contributions. It's like, oh, no, don't do that. Look, I took enough business school classes to know there's something called the termination sandwich, okay? The research says that if you're going to let someone go, you begin with a compliment, you sandwich the termination in the middle, and then you leave them with a compliment. So I hang my head. He said, Darren, I don't know why I'm going to do this, but here's your first coaching contract. Welcome to the National Football League. 18-page document. I flip to page 18, pull out my Pilot V5 Precise pen, scribble my name. He said, He said, son, do they still teach contract law? Son, that's an 18-page contract. I said, Coach, if there's one thing I know, it's when I don't have any leverage. There isn't a single clause in this contract that I am in any position to negotiate. I said, all I want to do is get to work. So I spend 2 years in Kansas City. I spend 2 years in Detroit with the Lions. I go for 2 years, West Virginia Mountaineers. I go the last year with the Cleveland Browns. We went 4-12. Now I know what you're thinking. Darren, everywhere you land, the record seems to be 4-12. This is a multivariate equation called football. I'm just one variable. We went 4-12, which, listen, given how the Browns had done, I thought that was pretty good. Unfortunately, the owner, Jimmy Haslam, didn't see it that way. And so after the final game, we go up to Pittsburgh. We lose to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers in the last 3 seconds. We get back to Cleveland, and there's a text from the owner's assistant, 8 a.m. staff meeting. Walk in at 8 o'clock. Jimmy Haslam walks in. He says, hey, guys, listen. First thing I want to say is I really appreciate all of your contributions. I said, oh, Jesus. He says, you're all fired. And I just want you to know that we wish you and your families well, from my family to yours. Meeting started at 8 a.m. Hey, Scott, it ended at 8:02. So I went home. I start scrambling eggs. I'm thinking, what's the next place, right? I'm talking to other coaches, where the opening's going to be. My oldest son, Dylan, walks in, and he starts tugging on my shirt. And I look down at him. He says, you eat breakfast? So I do what any good father would do in this moment. I ignored the kid and kept scrambling. Persistent fella. He comes back. Tug. You eat breakfast? I turned to my wife and I said, look, we're paying a lot of money for Dylan to go to this private school. Is something wrong with him? My wife grew up on a farm in Kansas, never wanted to pull the punches. She says, Darren, when was the last time you had breakfast with Dylan? When was the last time you had breakfast with Dylan? So I start to rummage through my memory bank. Right, I'm searching for anything. Not just breakfast. I can't find a dinner. Even as a full-time coach, I'm getting to the office at 4 a.m. On a good night, I'm home by 11. I'm sleeping at the office 2 nights a week during season. And the irony hit me that I was spending all of my time with other people's sons, and my own son didn't know me. In the deep end, this is where your relationships are. If you have living grandparents, call them. Call them. Those relationships, the people who supported you, the people who waited up for long practices and shipped you across the world for camps. Check in with them. This thing we call life doesn't wait. And one of my biggest regrets that I didn't spend the time going back to Carthage, Texas, or going to Denver City, see my grandfather and my grandmother while they were walking the earth. Stay in the deep end in your relationships. Stay in the deep end with your work. If you apply for a position and you can check every box, that's not the right job for you. You know those times when you start applying for something and you get down to a couple of the requirements and you're like, ooh, this is going to be a stretch. That's the deep end. That's where the good stuff happens. Here's what I'm going to tell you also. No matter where you go and what you do from this point forward, the one thing that I see at the University of Texas is I've had students from 73 different countries, every county in the state, every state in the U.S., and they get to the University of Texas and they attempt to recreate where they just came from. If you leave this place and try to recreate Highland Park in your relationships and in your thoughts, shame on you. Spend some time around some people who don't have your same hue. Spend some time around some people who don't speak your language. Spend some time around some people who don't worship your same God. Empathy is not to be confused with agreement. You don't have to agree. But the respect and the courage that it takes to listen, this is what is in short supply. And at the end of the day, no matter where you go, and no matter what you do, stay in the deep end. Thank you.